The stars looked different that Tuesday morning. Colonel Jake Morrison had been watching space for 23 years from his post deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, but he had never seen anything like this before. The radar screens showed dots, moving too fast and too organized to be asteroids or space junk. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked again. The dots were still there, getting bigger every minute. He counted them twice. 47 objects, all heading straight for Earth. "Sir, you need to see this." Sergeant Lisa Morgan pointed at her computer screen. The numbers made Jake's stomach drop. The objects were moving at speeds that should have been impossible. They would reach Earth in less than 6 hours. Jake picked up the red phone that connected directly to the White House. "This is Colonel Morrison at NORAD. We have a situation." President Lisa Carter was in her morning meeting when the call came. She listened to Jake's report without saying a word. When he finished, she closed her eyes for a moment. She had prepared for many things as president, but not this. "How sure are you, Colonel?" she asked. 100%, ma'am. These are not human ships. The technology is beyond anything we have." President Carter hung up and looked around the room at her advisors. Defense Secretary Ben Rodriguez was already reaching for his phone. "General." Amy Foster stood up, her face grim. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president said, "we appear to have visitors." Far above Earth, Commander Vextal studied the blue planet through the windows of his flagship. He was 9 feet tall with gray skin that looked like armor. His forearms moved gracefully as he touched different controls on his command chair. This would be his 18th conquest, and like all the others, it would be easy. The humans below had primitive technology. Their fastest ships barely left their atmosphere. They fought each other with simple weapons that fired metal bullets. Vextal had seen it all before on other worlds. "Commander," his second officer hissed through sharp teeth, "the planet shows signs of global communication networks. Should we disable them first?" Vextal waved one of his hands dismissively. "No need. Let them talk to each other. It will make no difference. Send the standard surrender demand." On Earth, every military base went to high alert. Soldiers who had been sleeping were shaken awake. Pilots ran to their planes. Ships that were in port prepared to leave immediately. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Ben Rodriguez gathered his top generals and admirals. The room was full of nervous energy as reports came in from around the world. Every nation with space monitoring equipment was seeing the same thing. "What do we know about their capabilities?" Rodriguez asked. General Amy Foster opened a folder. "Based on their approach speed and formation, they have technology far beyond ours. Their ships appear to be using some kind of energy propulsion we don't understand." Admiral Chris Thompson leaned forward. "Our satellites can't get clear images of their ships. Something is blocking our sensors." "Recommendations?" Rodriguez asked. "We mobilize everything," Foster said without hesitation. "Every base, every ship, every plane. If they want Earth, they'll have to fight for it." The alien message arrived at exactly noon Eastern Time. It came through every radio frequency, every television channel, and every internet connection on Earth at the same time. The voice was cold and mechanical, clearly translated by some kind of computer. "People of Earth, you are now part of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet will be occupied for the benefit of our civilization. Surrender all military forces immediately. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in the destruction of your largest cities." The message repeated in every human language, then stopped. President Carter was back in the situation room within minutes. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and advisors. Everyone was talking at once until she raised her hand for silence. "Options?" she said simply. "We could try to negotiate," suggested the Secretary of State. "With what?" General Foster replied. "They're not asking for negotiation. They're giving us orders." Dr. Kate Sullivan, a scientist from the CDC who had been brought in to advise on possible biological threats, spoke up. "We need to assume they've done this before. Their message was too prepared, too organized. This is routine for them." Jake Morrison's voice came through the conference room speakers from NORAD. "Ma'am, we're tracking their ships as they move into orbit. They're positioning themselves over major population centers." President Carter looked around the room. Every face showed the same mix of fear and determination. General Foster, begin mobilization of all military assets. Admiral Thompson, I want every ship we have ready to fight. Dr. Sullivan, start working on any biological or technological countermeasures you can think of. She paused and looked directly into the camera that would broadcast her words to the nation. And someone get me a line to every world leader. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Across the globe, the response was swift. In Russia, President Volkov ordered his nuclear submarines to patrol positions. In China, General Liu began moving troops and equipment. In Britain, Prime Minister Davies recalled all military personnel from leave. But it wasn't just the military that responded. In small towns and big cities, people began preparing in their own ways. Tony Rivera, who owned a garage in Texas, started converting pickup trucks into armored vehicles. Susan Davis, a high school teacher in Ohio, began researching chemistry and explosives online. Ryan Beck, a computer programmer in California, started trying to intercept alien communications. The first test came 18 hours after the ultimatum. A single alien ship descended from orbit and landed in a field outside Denver, Colorado. It was sleek and black, about the size of a football stadium, and it made no sound as it touched down. Captain Ellen Hayes was commanding the USS Nevada, a nuclear submarine patrolling off the coast of California, when she received orders that she never expected to hear. Fire on alien target. Repeat, fire on alien target. Ellen had served in the Navy for 15 years. She had trained for war against other humans, not aliens. But her orders were clear. She gave the command, and 2 torpedoes launched toward the alien scout ship that had appeared near the surface. The torpedoes hit their target and exploded. The alien ship shuddered but didn't sink. Instead, it rose out of the water, dripping and damaged, and fired back with a beam of purple light that turned a section of ocean into steam. Ellen ordered her submarine to dive deep and fast. As they descended, she could hear her crew talking, in worried voices. They had hurt the alien ship, but it was still flying. Their best weapons had only made it angry. Above them, the damaged alien ship limped back toward orbit. In the command center, the alien pilot sent a message to Commander Vextal that changed everything. Commander, the humans attacked without warning. They have weapons that can damage our ships. Vextal stared at the message in disbelief. In 17 previous conquests, not one species had fired a single shot. They had all surrendered immediately when they saw Zephyrian technology. He looked down at the blue planet spinning below his fleet. Maybe the humans were different. Maybe this wouldn't be as easy as he thought. On Earth, President Carter received the report of the submarine attack with mixed feelings. They had proven they could hurt the aliens, but they had also started a war with an enemy they didn't understand. She looked out the window of the White House at the night sky, where alien ships now hung like new stars. In 72 hours, those ships would either leave or begin destroying human cities. Carter picked up the phone to call every military commander on Earth. The next 3 days would determine whether humanity survived or became another conquered species in the Zephyrian Empire. The war for Earth was about to begin. The first Zephyrian landing ships came down like falling stars across the morning sky. Commander Vextal had chosen 6 major cities for the initial assault. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, and Sydney would be the examples that made the rest of humanity's surrender. But as the alien ships descended, they found something waiting for them that they had never seen before. In New York, Marine Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips crouched behind a concrete barrier in Central Park. Around him, 200 Marines aimed their rifles at the landing zone. Behind them, Army units had positioned tanks and artillery. Above them, Air Force jets circled like hunting hawks. Dan watched through his binoculars as the alien ship touched down. It was bigger than he expected, maybe 3 city blocks long, and shaped like a teardrop. The metal was dark and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Remember what we practiced." Dan spoke into his radio. "Aim for joints and openings, keep moving, don't give them stationary targets." The ship's door opened with a hiss of escaping gas. The first Zephyrian warrior stepped out, and Dan felt his heart skip. The alien was huge, 9 feet tall and covered in what looked like natural armor. It carried a weapon that glowed with purple energy. More aliens followed. They moved in perfect formation, their 4 arms handling weapons and equipment with smooth precision. They looked around at the empty park and the surrounding buildings with confidence. This was routine for them. Dan waited until 50 aliens had left their ship. Then he gave the signal. The attack came from everywhere at once. Rifle bullets, tank shells, and rocket-propelled grenades all struck the alien formation in the same second. The sound was deafening. When the smoke cleared, Dan saw something that made him smile. Several aliens were down, their armor cracked and leaking strange blue fluid. The others were scrambling for cover behind their ship, no longer moving in perfect formation. "They bleed," Dan said into his radio. "Pass the word to all units, they can be killed." In Tokyo, a similar scene played out. General Tanaka had hidden his soldiers in the subway tunnels beneath the city. When the aliens landed in the main square expecting to find terrified civilians, they found empty streets instead. The attack came from below. Explosives planted in the subway erupted beneath the alien landing zone, sending several warriors flying through the air. Japanese soldiers poured out of buildings and tunnels, firing everything they had. One alien tried to use its energy weapon on a group of soldiers, but the purple beam struck a mirror that had been strategically placed on a building. The beam reflected back and struck another alien, dropping it instantly. General Tanaka watched from his command post as his forces fought. "They fight like they expect us to run," he radioed to his commanders. "They are not prepared for an enemy that shoots back." At the Pentagon, Dr. Kate Sullivan was working 18 hours a day trying to understand the enemy. She had pieces of alien equipment that had been recovered from the first battles, and what she found was both encouraging and terrifying. "Their technology is advanced, but it's not magic," she explained to Defense Secretary Rodriguez. "Their energy shields work on a specific frequency. We can disrupt them." She pointed to a chart on her computer screen. "Look at this. Their shield generators emit electromagnetic signals that interfere with our cell phone towers. But if we reverse the process, we can use our communication networks to jam their shields." Rodriguez leaned forward. "How fast can we implement this? I need every electronics engineer in the country working on it. Give me 48 hours. In London, Sergeant Pete Johnson was having his own breakthrough. His squad had been fighting aliens in the financial district when he noticed something strange. Every time his radio made static noise, the alien weapons seemed to misfire. Pete grabbed the radio from his communications specialist. "Tommy, crank up the power on this thing. Make as much interference as you can." The radio squealed with feedback. Immediately, the alien warriors around them began stumbling, their weapons flickering and dying. Pete's squad opened fire and dropped 3 aliens before they could recover. "It's the radio waves," Pete shouted into his headset. "Their equipment doesn't work with our interference. Tell everyone to turn up their radios." Around the world, similar discoveries were being made. In Moscow, Russian soldiers found that flashing cameras disrupted alien sensors. In Beijing, Chinese forces discovered that car alarms confused alien communication systems. In Sydney, Australian troops learned that playing loud music made alien coordination impossible. Commander Vextal watched the reports from the surface with growing alarm. His warriors were supposed to be establishing control zones in the major cities. Instead, they were fighting for their lives against primitives with metal projectile weapons. "How many casualties?" he asked his tactical officer. 43 dead. 72 wounded in the first 6 landing zones, Commander." Vextal's forearms clenched into fists. In 17 previous conquests, the Zephyrian Empire had lost a total of 6 warriors. These humans had killed more of his people in one day than the last 3 planets combined. "What is different about these creatures?" he demanded. His science officer, a thin alien with pale skin, consulted his tablet. "They seem to analyze our technology and adapt their tactics in real time, Commander. Each engagement shows them learning from the previous one." On the surface, this learning process was happening at incredible speed. Captain Lisa Morgan had been shot down over Chicago, but she managed to eject before her F-16 crashed. As she parachuted down, she watched alien fighters pursuing other human aircraft. Lisa noticed that the alien ships turned slowly, like they were heavy or difficult to maneuver. She also saw that they fired their energy weapons in straight lines, unable to adjust the beam once it was fired. When she landed, she immediately radioed this information to other pilots. The alien fighters can't turn quickly. Use hit-and-run tactics, fire and break away immediately. Within hours, Air Force pilots around the world were using Lisa's observations. Human losses in air combat dropped dramatically, while alien losses increased. Dr. Sullivan was amazed at how quickly information was spreading among human forces. They're sharing tactical data in real time, she told her research team. Every unit that learns something new passes it on immediately. Mary Klein, an engineer from Detroit who had joined the civilian technical support team, was reverse engineering captured alien weapons. Their energy weapons are powerful, but they overheat quickly, she reported. And look at this. She showed the team a damaged alien rifle. The power source is about the size of a car battery, but it only has enough energy for maybe 50 shots. Our bullets are much more efficient. This information was passed to military units worldwide. Soldiers began using tactics to force aliens to waste ammunition, then attacking when the energy weapons needed time to recharge. In New York, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Phillips was preparing for the second day of fighting. His Marines had held Central Park, but more alien ships were landing throughout the city. "Sir," one of his sergeants reported, "the aliens are changing their tactics. They're not advancing in formation anymore. They're using cover and moving in small groups." Dan nodded. "They're learning too. But so are we." He looked at his men, who were now armed with modified weapons and equipment designed to exploit alien weaknesses. The difference is we're better at it. The second day of fighting was different from the first. Both sides had learned, but the humans were adapting faster. Alien casualties mounted while human forces became more effective with each engagement. By evening, Commander Vextal made a decision that shocked his officers. "Recall all ground forces. Return to orbit." "Commander," his tactical officer protested, "we have never retreated from a primitive species." Vextal looked down at the blue planet where his invasion force was being systematically destroyed by creatures that should have been helpless. "We have never fought a species like this before." As alien ships lifted off from Earth's surface, carrying their wounded and defeated forces, humans around the world realized something important. They had not just survived the first alien assault, they had won. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would be back, and next time they would be ready for human tactics. The question was, would humanity be ready for theirs? Commander Vextal stared at the reports from his failed ground assault. His rage burned through his four-chambered heart as he read the casualty numbers again. 115 Zephyrian warriors dead, 230 wounded. Against primitives with metal bullets. "This ends now," he hissed to his bridge crew. "If they will not surrender, we will burn their cities from orbit, show them the price of resistance." His weapons officer looked uncomfortable. "Commander, orbital bombardment was not part of the original conquest plan. The Empire prefers to keep planets intact for colonization." Vextal's eyes glowed with fury. "The Empire has never faced humans before. Charge the plasma cannons. Target their largest population centers." The first strike hit London at dawn. Beam of superheated energy descended from space and struck the financial district. Buildings melted like ice under a blowtorch. The death toll was immediate and massive. Within minutes, similar strikes hit New York, Tokyo, Moscow, and Beijing. From orbit, the Zephyrians watched with satisfaction as fires spread and humans fled in panic. This was how conquests were supposed to work. But something unexpected happened. Instead of surrendering, the humans became more unified than ever before. President Carter stood in the emergency bunker beneath the White House, watching news feeds from the devastated cities. Her face was stone as she listened to casualty reports. 2 million dead in the first hour of bombardment. "Ma'am," General Foster said quietly, "we're receiving surrender offers from several smaller nations. They want to negotiate before their cities are hit." Carter turned to face the room full of military leaders and advisors. Her voice was calm but filled with steel. Send a message to every nation on Earth. Anyone who surrenders to the aliens is now an enemy of the United States. We fight together or we die together. Defense Secretary Rodriguez stepped forward. Ma'am, that could start a global conflict even while we're fighting the aliens. No, Carter replied. It will end one. Every human who bends the knee to these creatures makes it easier for them to control the rest of us. We make our stand here now together. The president's message went out to every world leader. Within hours, even the nations that had been considering surrender changed their minds. The sight of burning cities had shown everyone what cooperation with the aliens really meant. Admiral Chris Thompson was coordinating naval forces from his command ship in the Pacific when the new orders came through. All naval assets are now part of a single global fleet. We're going to fight back. Chris looked at his tactical display. Ships from dozens of nations were converging on strategic positions around the world. American destroyers sailed alongside. Russian submarines, Chinese aircraft carriers coordinated with British frigates. It was the largest naval cooperation in human history. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving targeting data from civilian sources, amateur astronomers, satellite operators. Even ham radio operators are tracking alien ship movements. Chris smiled grimly. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had united humanity against a common enemy. Every person on Earth now had a reason to fight. In underground bunkers across the globe, a different kind of war was being planned. General Frank Miller was overseeing the construction of massive tunnel networks that connected major cities. The work had been going on for decades as part of various civil defense projects, but now it had a new purpose. The aliens can burn the surface, Frank explained to his engineering teams, but they can't reach us down here. We'll turn every major city into a fortress they can't see or target. The tunnel systems became highways for moving troops and supplies without being detected by alien sensors. More importantly, they became staging areas for the kind of warfare that was about to change everything. Dr. Helen Wang had worked for NASA for 15 years, but she had never imagined using space technology as a weapon. Now she stood in mission control, coordinating with space agencies around the world to turn everything in Earth's orbit into ammunition. We have 347 operational satellites, she reported to the Joint Command Center, plus the International Space Station and 2 cargo vessels that were heading to Mars. What can they do against alien ships? Asked Admiral Thompson through the video link. Helen's smile was cold. Ever seen what happens when a paint chip hits a spacecraft at 17,000 miles per hour? We're going to find out what happens when an entire satellite does it. The first improvised space attack came 12 hours after the orbital bombardment began. The Zephyrians were focused on targeting cities when alarms started screaming throughout their fleet. Commander, the tactical officer shouted, we have multiple objects approaching from various orbits. They appear to be satellites? Vextal looked at his display in confusion. The humans were throwing their communications equipment at his ships. It seemed like desperation until the first satellite struck his cruiser Deathbringer. The impact tore through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. The satellite's nuclear power source exploded on contact, sending radioactive debris through 3 decks. Emergency alarms wailed as atmosphere vented into space. Damage report, Vextal demanded. Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. We've lost life support in that section. 17 crew members dead. Before Vextal could respond, his fleet was hit by a coordinated barrage of satellites, space debris, and modified cargo containers. The humans had turned their entire orbital infrastructure into a weapon. On Earth's surface, the underground war was beginning. Susan Davis had been a high school chemistry teacher before the invasion. Now she was mixing explosives in a subway tunnel beneath Chicago, teaching other civilians how to make bombs from household materials. The key is timing, she explained to a group of volunteers that included shop owners, office workers, and teenagers. We hit them when they're not expecting. It then disappear before they can respond. Her student Tony Rivera had modified his pickup truck with armor plating and mounted a machine gun in the back. Mrs. Davis, how do we know when they're coming? Susan pointed to a laptop computer where Ryan Beck, A programmer who had joined their cell was monitoring alien communications. Ryan's been listening to their radio chatter. He's learning their language. Ryan looked up from his computer, his eyes red from lack of sleep. They're getting frustrated. Their commanders keep asking for status reports that their ground units can't give because we keep hitting them and running away. This pattern was being repeated in cities around the world. Organized military resistance had evolved into something the aliens had never encountered before. Every human civilian had become a potential enemy combatant. In the ruins of London, mechanic Bob Turner was teaching people how to convert cars into mobile weapons platforms. In Tokyo, office worker Kenji Nakamura was leading raids on alien supply drops. In Moscow, factory worker Ivan Petrov was making armor-piercing bullets in his basement workshop. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting not just an army, but an entire species. Commander Vextal received reports from around the globe that all told the same story. His forces were being attacked constantly by enemies they couldn't see or predict. Supply lines were being cut. Communication relays were being destroyed. Even his most advanced equipment was being sabotaged by humans who seemed to understand alien technology better than the aliens themselves. "How is this possible?" he demanded during a command meeting. "They are primitives. They fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles." His science officer had been studying human behavior for weeks. "Commander, I believe we underestimated their adaptability. They learn from every encounter and share that knowledge instantly across their entire species. What do you recommend?" "We need reinforcements, Commander. Many more ships and warriors. This planet will require our full attention." Vextal felt something he had never experienced in 17 previous conquests. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. The humans were not just resisting. They were winning. "Send a message to the homeworld," he ordered. "Request the Second Fleet. Tell them we need everything they have." The message that went out to the Zephyrian Empire contained words that had never been used before in a conquest report. Requesting immediate reinforcement. Enemy resistance stronger than anticipated. Situation critical. On Earth, intelligence services intercepted and translated parts of the alien communication. The news spread quickly through human resistance networks. President Carter received the report in her bunker command center. "They're calling for help," she said to her advisors. "That means we're hurting them worse than they expected." General Foster nodded. "But it also means more of them are coming. We need to be ready for round 2. Carter looked at the tactical displays showing resistance activities around the globe. Humans were fighting back with everything they had, and it was working. But the real test was still coming. "Send word to all resistance cells," she ordered. "We've proven we can fight them. Now we prove we can beat them." The war for Earth was entering a new phase, and for the first time since the invasion began, the humans were ready. The second Zephyrian fleet arrived 3 weeks after Commander Vextal's desperate call for help. 50 more warships dropped out of hyperspace, doubling the size of the alien armada hanging over Earth. The ships were larger than the first fleet, bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Admiral Kexeron commanded the reinforcements. He was older than Vextal, scarred from campaigns across the galaxy. As his flagship took position above Earth, he studied the tactical reports with growing disbelief. "You lost over 300 warriors to primitives?" he asked Vextal during their first meeting. Vextal's forearms tensed with shame and anger. "These humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They adapt faster than our tactical computers can predict." "Primitives are primitives," Kexeron replied coldly. "You have forgotten how to wage proper war. Watch and learn." But while the aliens argued in orbit, humanity had not been idle. The 3 weeks of breathing room had been used to prepare something that would change the course of the war. In a bunker beneath the ruins of London, CIA Director Paul Anderson sat across a table from his counterparts from every major intelligence agency on Earth: Russian FSB, Chinese MSS, Israeli Mossad, British MI6, and a dozen others. Men and women who had spent their careers as enemies were now working together with a single purpose. "The alien command structure follows a strict hierarchy," Paul explained, pointing to diagrams on the wall. "Take out their commanders, and the Lower ranks become confused and ineffective. Colonel Yuki Tanaka from Japanese intelligence nodded. Our teams have identified 3 major alien communication hubs in the Pacific region. If we can infiltrate and destroy them simultaneously, we can blind their entire fleet for several hours, long enough for what we have planned, added General Kozlov from Russia with a grim smile. The infiltration began at midnight, coordinated across 12 time zones. In New Zealand, a team of former Special Forces soldiers swam through flooded tunnels to reach an alien facility built on a small island. In Hawaii, surfers who had become guerrilla fighters used their knowledge of ocean currents to approach an alien base from underwater. Mary Klein had spent the 3 weeks turning her engineering skills into something the aliens would never expect. Working in an abandoned factory in Detroit, she had assembled a team of mechanics, welders, and electronics experts. Together, they had built something incredible. It's basically a giant electromagnetic pulse cannon, she explained to the soldiers, who had come to collect her invention. But instead of destroying electronics, it's tuned to the frequency of Zephyrian neural implants. The weapon looked like a satellite dish mounted on the back of a truck. It was crude compared to alien technology. But Mary had learned something important from studying captured equipment. The aliens relied heavily on cybernetic implants to coordinate their actions. One shot from this and every alien within 2 miles will be cut off from their command network, she said. They'll be deaf and blind for at least an hour. Similar weapons were being built in factories around the world. Humans had turned their industrial capacity into a war machine, producing specialized anti-alien equipment at a pace that amazed even the engineers. Ryan Beck had made the most important breakthrough of all. Working 18 hours a day in his makeshift computer lab, he had finally cracked the Zephyrian communication codes. More than that, he had learned to speak their language fluently. "I can get into their systems," he told the Joint Command Center through a secure video link. "Not just listen to their communications, but actually send false orders." Admiral Thompson leaned forward. "What kind of false orders?" Ryan's tired face lit up with the first smile he had shown in weeks. "Any kind we want. Troop movements, supply, runs, even battle formations. I can make their own computers lie to them." The plan that emerged from weeks of preparation was audacious even by human standards. Every resistance cell, every military unit, and every civilian volunteer would attack at exactly the same moment, but this time, they wouldn't just hit the aliens with bullets and bombs. They would hit them with their own technology turned against them. Admiral Kexron was reviewing his battle plans when the human counterattack began. His confidence in easy victory lasted exactly 17 minutes. The first sign of trouble came when his tactical display started showing impossible information. According to his sensors, human forces were simultaneously attacking in over 300 locations around the globe. But the readings showed human armies that were 10 times larger than intelligence estimates. "Verify these numbers," he ordered his tactical officer. Before the verification could be completed, Mary Klein's electromagnetic pulse weapons fired from hidden positions around the world. The pulse waves, invisible to human eyes, swept over alien positions like a silent storm. Suddenly, Zephyrian warriors who had been moving in perfect coordination began stumbling and firing randomly. Their cybernetic implants, designed to make them superior soldiers, had become their weakness. In the chaos that followed, Ryan Beck began his electronic assault. False orders flooded the alien communication networks. Units were told to retreat when they should advance. Supply ships were directed to empty coordinates. Battle formations were ordered to break apart at crucial moments. "Commander," Kexron's communications officer reported in panic. "We're receiving contradictory orders from multiple sources. Our system shows commands coming from our own fleet, but the orders make no strategic sense." Kexron realized with growing horror that the humans had not just learned to fight. They had learned to think like Zephyrians. The ground assault that followed was unlike anything in the war so far. Captain Lisa Morgan led a squadron of modified fighter jets in the first successful penetration of alien air defenses. The jets had been equipped with Ryan's electronic warfare systems and Mary's electromagnetic weapons. "Fox 1, Lisa called out as she fired a missile at an alien cruiser. But this missile was different. Instead of explosives, it carried a computer virus that Ryan had designed specifically for Zephyrian systems. The virus spread through the alien ship's network like wildfire. Navigation systems failed. Weapons became unresponsive. Life support began shutting down randomly. The mighty cruiser, which could have destroyed an entire city, became a floating piece of junk in less than 5 minutes. "Target destroyed," Lisa reported, but her voice showed no celebration. She knew this was just the beginning. Around the world, similar attacks were taking place. In Australia, Aboriginal trackers were using their traditional hunting skills to guide advanced human technology to alien positions. In Africa, former child soldiers who had learned to fight with minimal resources were teaching regular armies how to make every bullet count. In South America, environmentalists who had spent years protecting the rainforest were now using their knowledge of the jungle to set traps for alien patrols. In Antarctica, research scientists were using weather modification equipment to create storms that grounded alien aircraft. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Emma Rodriguez had been studying alien prisoners, captured during the early battles. What she discovered changed everything humans thought they knew about their enemy. "They're not just warriors," she reported to the Joint Command Center. "They're a species that has forgotten how to think for themselves. Their entire society depends on central command and control." She pointed to brain scans of captured aliens. "Look at this. The cybernetic implants don't just help with communication. They do most of the thinking. Without them, individual Zephyrians are actually less intelligent than humans." This information spread through human forces faster than any military communication network could carry it. Suddenly, every human fighter understood that they weren't just fighting superior technology. They were fighting a species that had made itself dependent on that technology. The psychological impact was immediate. Human forces that had been fighting defensively began taking offensive action. If the aliens were dependent on their technology, then destroying that technology would cripple them completely. Commander Vextal watched his fleet falling apart around him. Ships that had conquered 17 star systems were being destroyed by modified human aircraft. Ground forces that had never known defeat were being routed by civilians with homemade weapons. "Admiral," he called to Kexron, "we need to withdraw and regroup." But Kexron was staring at his tactical display in shock. The humans had done something impossible. They had turned a defensive war into an offensive one. They weren't just surviving the invasion anymore. They were winning it. "Impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives. How can they be defeating us?" The answer came from his science officer, who had been monitoring human communications. "Sir, they're not fighting like primitives anymore. They're fighting like us, but better. They've learned everything we know and added their own innovations." As alien ships began retreating from Earth's surface, humans around the world realized that something fundamental had changed. They were no longer the victims of an invasion. They had become the hunters, and the aliens had become the prey. Toitien. War was far from over, but for the first time since the Zephyrians arrived, victory seemed possible. The plan was insane, but it was the only chance humanity had. Jack Burton floated in the International Space Station, looking through the window at the massive Zephyrian command ship hanging in orbit like a dark moon. In 6 hours, he would ram the station into that ship, carrying enough nuclear warheads to crack a continent. "You don't have to do this alone," came the voice of Commander Alice Chen from Mission Control. "We can find another way." Jack adjusted his spacesuit and checked the navigation controls one more time. "No, we can't. This is the shot that ends the war. If I can take out their flagship, their whole command structure falls apart." Far below on Earth, every remaining human military unit was preparing for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Admiral Thompson coordinated the largest naval assault in human history. General Foster positioned ground forces for simultaneous attacks on alien bases worldwide. Air Force General Patricia Williams prepared every aircraft on the planet for one massive strike. But the most important preparation was happening in places the aliens would never expect. Susan Davis stood in Grand Central Station in New York, which had become a massive underground weapons factory. Around her, hundreds of civilians worked frantically to prepare the final surprise that humanity had been building for months. "How many do we have?" asked Tony Rivera, who was now leading a mechanized unit of converted civilian vehicles. 12,000, Susan replied, looking at the rows of devices that lined the station platforms. Every major city, every military base, every alien landing site. When Ryan gives the signal, we activate them all at once. The devices looked simple, metal boxes about the size of car batteries. But inside each one was technology that Mary, Klein and her engineering teams had perfected over months of trial and error. They were quantum resonance disruptors, designed to interfere with the fundamental forces that held alien technology together. Ryan Beck sat in his computer lab, now expanded to fill an entire subway tunnel. Banks of servers and communication equipment surrounded him, connected to every remaining piece of human technology on the planet. His fingers moved across keyboards faster than most people could see, preparing for the largest cyber attack in history. "I'm inside their mainframe," he announced to the Joint Command Center. "When Jack hits their flagship, I'll have maybe 30 seconds while their security systems reset. That's when I upload the virus." The virus was Ryan's masterpiece, a piece of code that would spread through every Zephyrian system and turn their own technology against them. Weapons would target their own ships, shields would shut down. Navigation would send them flying into each other. Commander Vextal knew the end was coming. His fleet was in chaos, his ground forces were trapped and surrounded, and the humans had somehow learned to fight better than species with 1,000 years more experience. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his tactical display show defeat after defeat. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are mobilizing everything they have. Every ship, every aircraft, every ground unit. This appears to be their final assault." Admiral Kexron appeared on the communication screen, his scarred face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This cannot be happening. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered hundreds of worlds." "Not this one," Vextal replied quietly. "We underestimated them from the beginning. We thought they were primitives, but they are something else entirely." "What are they?" Kexron demanded. Vextal looked down at the blue planet that had become his nightmare. "They are what we used to be, before we became dependent on our technology. They still remember how to think, how to adapt, how to survive." The final battle began at dawn, coordinated across every time zone on Earth. In the Pacific, Admiral Thompson led a fleet of ships from 20 nations in an assault on the alien naval base. Human submarines fired torpedoes guided by Ryan's hacking, while surface ships launched missiles that had been reprogrammed to ignore alien countermeasures. Captain Lisa Morgan flew her fighter jet through a sky filled with alien aircraft, but this time the odds were different. Human planes outnumbered alien fighters 3-1, and every human pilot was equipped with technology that made alien weapons useless. "This is for London," Lisa said, as she fired a modified missile at an alien cruiser. The missile punched through the ship's shields like they weren't there, and the cruiser exploded in a ball of purple fire. On the ground, Colonel Sarah Martinez led the assault on the primary Zephyrian base outside Denver. Her forces included regular army units, National Guard, Marines, and thousands of civilian volunteers who had learned to fight during the Long War. The base was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy shields and automated defenses. But as Sarah's forces approached, Mary Klein's electromagnetic pulse weapons fired from hidden positions. The alien shields flickered and died, and the automated defenses began shooting at random targets. "All units, advance," Sarah ordered. "Remember, these are the same aliens who thought we would surrender without a fight. Show them how wrong they were." The assault was swift and brutal. Human forces poured into the alien base from 12 different directions, using tactics that the aliens couldn't predict or counter. Soldiers who had been teachers and mechanics and office workers 6 months ago fought like they had trained for their entire lives. High above the battle, Jack Burton made his final preparations. The International Space Station had been stripped of everything except life support and navigation. The cargo bays were packed with nuclear warheads, conventional explosives, and one special surprise that Ryan had prepared. Mission Control. This is Jack. Beginning final approach. Copy that, Jack. You are go for impact. Jack fired the station's thrusters, pushing the massive structure toward the Zephyrian flagship. Through the window, he could see alien fighters scrambling to intercept him, but it was too late. The station was too big and moving too fast to stop. "Tell my family I love them," Jack said into his radio. Then he cut the communication and focused on his target. The impact was visible from the surface of Earth. The International Space Station struck the Zephyrian flagship at 17,000 miles per hour, and both vessels disappeared in a flash of nuclear fire that lit up the night sky. In that moment, Ryan Beck launched his virus into the alien network. With their flagship destroyed and their command structure in chaos, the Zephyrian computer systems had no defense against the invasion of hostile code. Across the solar system, alien ships began destroying themselves. Weapons turned on their own vessels. Navigation systems sent ships crashing into asteroids. Life support systems shut down without warning. But the final blow came from Susan Davis and her army of civilian engineers. As the alien fleet struggled with Ryan's virus, 12,000 quantum disruptors activated simultaneously around the globe. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every piece of Zephyrian technology on Earth simply stopped working. Weapons fell silent. Armor became ordinary metal. The aliens who had seemed so superior suddenly found themselves naked and helpless on a hostile world. The few surviving Zephyrian ships in orbit began a desperate retreat. Commander Vextal, badly wounded and floating in an escape pod, watched his mighty empire's fleet scatter like frightened animals. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. How did primitives defeat the greatest military force in the galaxy? The answer came to him as his pod drifted away from Earth. The humans weren't primitives. They were something the Zephyrian Empire had forgotten how to be. They were survivors who never stopped learning, never stopped fighting, never stopped believing they could win against any odds. Within a year, the news of humanity's victory had spread across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, began to crumble as other conquered species launched their own rebellions. The techniques that humans had developed were copied and improved by dozens of other races. The Galactic community learned a lesson that would last for generations. Some species were too dangerous to conquer. Earth and its inhabitants were placed on a list of worlds that no sane military force would ever attack. 20 years later, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office at the newly built Planetary Defense Headquarters. He was older now, gray-haired, and scarred from the war that had changed everything. Through his window, he could see the construction of humanity's first interstellar warships, built with technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment. "Sir," his aide announced, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown alien species." Jake tensed. "Are they hostile?" "No, sir. They're requesting permission to approach peacefully. The message says, 'We come in peace. We know what happened to the Zephyrians. We wish to establish diplomatic relations with the species that taught the galaxy how to fight back.'" Jake smiled and leaned back in his chair. The war was over, but its lessons would echo through the stars for centuries. Humanity had proven that technology alone didn't determine the winner of a war. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the refusal to give up. "Grant them permission to approach," Jake said, "but keep the defense systems ready, just in case they haven't learned the lesson as well as they think they have." The last species to invade Earth had indeed been the last to invade anything ever again, and the galaxy was a different place because of it.